everyone, this is Gina. Today I'm going to show you how to make this bracelet. Now this is using the beads in the Splash of Color treasure bag. However, you can use any beads you have on hand. They are very common beads, and we'll discuss that in the next section when I show you what you need. So don't feel left out. You can do this. I want to show you what this looks like. I used a button that was rose shaped for my clasping, and this is what the units look like, and really very pretty. It's a very basic stitch that I've just modified to make look more complicated than it is. It's an easy stitch. It's a fast moving project, and you should be able to master it really quickly. So let me take this off, see if I can take it off quickly and show it to you. So you just take the little loop off around the button, and this is what it looks like. Really very pretty. I really enjoyed making this. It was fast and just a lot of fun, and I love the little maple leaf and the little squirrely beads that I used. Turned out really pretty. Let's get one more quick look at it close up, and that's what that looks like. And let's go ahead and look at the material list and get started. Okay, for this project today, we are using some things from the Splash of Color treasure bag. However, these are very basic sizes and shapes of beads, so you can use anything in your stash that you would like. And if you do not have an 8mm round, this pattern will also work for a 6mm round. You will just have to adjust your length as you do this, probably do a couple more units to get the length that you want. So what we're going to be using from the treasure bag are both of the 8mm round frosted colorful beads. So one is kind of striped and one has maple leaves, and we're going to use both packages of those and mix them together. Then we're going to use a 15-0 and 11-0 seed bead. I am using metallic bronze Toho seed beads. And then we will use from the treasure bag the 4mm round opaque turquoise bead, and we will also use the 2x3 pink opaque pink rondelle bead that's in the treasure bag. So these are beads, like I said, that most everyone has in their stash. So you can find those and do this right along with me, regardless if you have the bag or not. I'm also going to be using a button for this, for my clasping, and I have this little shank button. It's a little rose shape. You can use any shank button that you would like. You don't want it to be gigantically huge, but this one is probably about, let me see how wide it is here. This one's about 20mm wide, so it's about a ½ inch, I believe, and that's about the right size. You can use whatever you would like though. So we are then going to use some, I have some Nanofil 10-pound, and I'm going to use that, but you can also use Nanofil 12-pound, 6 or 8-pound Fireline. That will all work. I know Nanofil is getting hard to find because they are discontinuing it, and I am looking into some other options, but we'll probably have to go back to Fireline for a little while. But this is what I'm using today. I'm using a size 12 beading needle. You can also use a size 10 if your 15-0 seed beads will fit over it fine. Then use a size 10 and put onto your needle a wingspan of thread. So wingspan is when you spread your arms out from side to side and you measure from your fingertips of the first arm, the length of that arm across your chest, the length of the second arm to the fingertips on that arm. Start with a wingspan. You will probably need to extend your Nanofil or Fireline during this process, so I will post a link to a video below that will show you how to do that. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to start this project, we are going to pick up onto our needle an 8mm round, and I'm just going to alternate my types of beads. So I'm using a striped first, doesn't really matter, you can use whichever one you want. And then I'm going to pick up a 3x2 crystal, a 4mm round, a 3x2 crystal, and then an 8mm round, and I'll use a leaf. And then I'm going to pick up a 3x2, a 4mm round, and a 3x2. This is our basic unit right here. Then we're going to bring this down to the end of the thread here, and we're just going to tie a knot. You don't have to leave a real long tail, just enough to tie your knot. So let's go ahead and tie an overhand knot, making sure that the thread goes down between the beads and not on top of them. So just pull a knot down between the 8mm round and the 3x2 crystal here. And then let's just sew back through all of them. So I'm just going to I'm coming out where my knot is, I'm going into the crystal and just move myself all the way around this entire unit here. Until I work my way all the way back up to where the knot is on my unit here. So now that I'm where my threads meet, I'm going to sew all the way over to this bead. So I'll go through the 8/0 or the 8mm, the crystal, and this crystal, just to get away from my tail and to start my next unit. We're going to be working through for our next units. I just stabbed myself. Wow, that was great. I'm going to be working through the smaller beads for each unit. So what we're going to do is we're going to share this 4mm round bead each time we make a new unit. So we'll pick up everything else except for one of those 4mm rounds. So we'll begin with a 3x2. And then since on this side I have my leaf bead, I'm going to pick up a striped one. And then I'm going to pick up a 3x2. And then I'm going to pick up a 4mm round, or yes, 4mm round and a 3x2. I'm going to drop these down. And then I'm going to pick up an 8mm round and drop it down. And then I'm going to pick up a 3x2, and I'm going to go back through the 4mm round bead on my unit here. So I have all the same beads. I'm just sharing this little 4mm round. So we have two identical units sharing the same bead here. Now we're going to sew back through this because these are big beads. It's kind of floppy. You need to secure it. It's very difficult to make your next unit when it wants to fall apart. Plus, you want to make sure that your bracelet doesn't break. So just sew back through all of these units here, or all of these beads on the unit, excuse me. And it's going to be floppy and weird. And that's okay. Just keep working through it. Now I'm all the way around. I need to work back down to this 4mm round here so that I can make my next unit. So let's just work all the way down again. And exit that 4mm round. Then we're going to do the exact same thing again. We're going to pick up a rondelle. We're coming out this direction, so we know this is our next style of bead. So I want to pick up the other color. So I'll pick up a striped one. And then I'm going to pick up a 3mm or a 3x2. And then I'm going to pick up a 4mm round, a 3x2. And then I'm going to pick up an 8mm round and a 3x2. We're going to drop this down and come back through the 4mm round on our piece. Just like that. Now we're going to go ahead and sew back through it again, and then sew halfway back through until we are to the 4mm round here. So we have to sew all the way around once. And now we have to go through this bead here. And we are all the way around. So now we're going to sew halfway around up to this bead. So just go ahead and work your way right back up to that bead. And we're just going to continue doing this stitch until we have 15 units. are all of the beads that were in the treasure bag, which is 38mm round beads. Now, as you can see, this is measuring at 7.5 inches, and that's basically where I want my bracelet to be when it's done, is 7.5 inches. However, these are big beads and they're going to take up some room on the wrist, so I'm going to the length I want, and then I'm going to add my clasping. My clasping will add a little bit of length to it. So let me show you what I'm doing, because my neck, one of my embellishments is going to probably shrink this down a little bit too. So this already fits my wrist, just like this. Now, it's going to be a little big when I'm done so that it has some movement in it. So you may want to judge how many units you want to use for your wrist. If you have a much larger wrist and you need more length, then you can go ahead and add a couple of little units with just your 4mm rounds on the end. I'm going to show you how to do that because I'm going to add one to put my clasping on, and then we will do the other end to finish the clasping. But we're going to start with the button end here. And I want to extend this out a little bit for a couple of reasons. One, so that my button stays on here nice, and two, so that I can show you how you can extend your length a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm coming out of the 4mm round bead here after finishing my last unit, and I'm probably going to end up, my bracelet's probably going to be a little bit big, but I wanted to show you just in case you have a large wrist. So we're going to pick up a 3x2 and then a 4mm round and then a 3x2. And we're going to go back into the 4mm round here. Now you can see how that has extended a little bit. You could also put some seed beads on either side if you'd like. This is going to be under my button, so I'm not too worried about it, but you could put a seed bead in between each bead and make a couple of units for your extension and then put on your button. You can do it on this side too. You can make more extensions before we make our loop around to go around the button. So that's what you can do to extend it. And I'm actually going to take this off because I think I'm going to end up with a very big bracelet if I do that. I think one of my embellishments will squeeze this down a little bit, but I still think that perhaps with my clasping, I'm going to have much too big of a bracelet for my wrist. So I'm going to take this off, and I'll be right back. So I have taken that little extension off. If you want the extension to push your button out a little bit further to make your clasping a little easier, then you may want to just leave off another unit, or perhaps you can, just leave off another unit. Just work through it the way that you can work through it in order to get the length you want and get the result you want. Because you can always leave off a unit and do a little extension on both sides, and that would help with your length to lengthen it. Of course, if you want a shorter bracelet, then you're just going to do less units. And you can do your extension or not, just like I'm doing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up one of my little 3x4 rondelles, or my 3x2 rondelles here. And then I'm going to pick up about, I don't know, 6 11-0 seed beads. See how that works. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then another rondelle. Of course, you do not have to pick up these rondelles if you do not want to. They are a little sharp. And this is a part that moves, so if you're afraid that it's going to break your thread, then don't pick up the rondelles. I just want them as a stopper, and I'm going to sew through it plenty of times to ensure that I do not have a lot of issues with it. So this is what I have, and now I'm going to pick up my shank. My shank is big enough to go over all this, I believe. Let me see. Yes. So I'm just going to bring this down like this. And then I'm going to go back through the 4mm round bead here and pull this down. And now you can see that I have a nice, I even extended a little bit with those crystals. So you could, if you're worried about the crystals, put a couple 8-0s there instead of the crystals also. It just depends on how worried you get about your strength of your bracelet. And then we're going to sew back up through all of these beads. So I'm going to get you in closer so you can see. I am coming out of the 4mm round here. I'm going to go up into this crystal, and then I'm just going to manipulate my button around as I go through all these beads so that I can get through all of them. So I'm stopping here, and I'm going to go through, pull through, and then I'm just going to go through here, back down into this crystal on this side. Then I'm going to pull this all together because I just pulled it all apart. And then I'm going to go back into this crystal that I started in. And I'm going to do that about 3 times, and I'll be back. Okay, so I got you in close here so you can see my button now is secure. It's got a nice little arc that it rests on so it can move around and it can function as a clasp for my bracelet. Now, I'm coming out of this 4mm round bead after going around and securing my button, and I'm going to pop down into this 3x2 and the first frosted bead here. Not that it's frosted anymore. I have so much oil on my hands that they're not frosted anymore. Anyway, so I'm coming through this 8mm round, and then I'm going to pick up an 11/0. We're going to do some embellishments all the way around, and when we get to the end of this embellishment, we'll put the other end of the clasping on. So we're going to work our way down the bracelet. We're going to pick up an 11/0. We're going to pick up a 2x3 or a 3x2 crystal and an 11/0. We're coming out of this 8mm round. We're going to go into this next 8mm round bead and pull it. Now, I said in the beginning you could do this with 6mm rounds, and you can. This is what it looks like with 6mm round beads, and of course your length is going to be a lot. You're going to have to change your length. You're going to have to use more beads. But this is what it looks like with the finished embellishment, and this is what it looks like at the stage we are at right now, putting in this embellishment here. So you can do this way too. Let's go ahead and continue this embellishment. Pick up an 11/0, a 3x2, an 11/0, slide from 8mm bead to 8mm round bead, and pull that crystal down into place, and that is what that should look like. Continue doing that the entire length of the bracelet, and we will be back. Okay, so I have done my embellishment, as you can see, all the way down, and now I am coming out of this 8mm bead. And we're going to work our way up into this 4mm and make a loop to go around the button for the clasping. However, first I want to cut this tail down a little bit, and then I'm just going to grab my lighter and just burn it down. And then I am going to sew up through to the 4mm round bead here. So let me turn this around so I can actually get to it. I'm going to go up. I'm coming out of the 8mm round bead. I'm going to go up into this little crystal and then into the 4mm round right here. Now, again, you can do the small extension that I showed you if you would like on this side, so that you have a little bit more if you would like to, or you can just begin picking up seed beads. And what we're going to do, if you want a little bit of length too, you could, let's just go ahead and pick up seed beads and make a loop here. I think how I want to do this. Let me see what I've got for. Yeah, I've got plenty of length, so I don't want to do that. You could put a couple of seed beads here and go up through a crystal. You could put a couple seed beads and a crystal, all of your loop seed beads, and then go back through the crystal and then put 2 more seed beads on this side. That would give you a little bit more length too. The way I'm going to do it now is just going to make a round circle. If you do what I just explained, you'll have kind of a teardrop shape. So we're just going to go ahead. I'll get way too much length if I do that. I'm just going to go ahead and start picking up some 11/0 seed beads onto this. And I'm using my 11/0s instead of 15/0s. It'll look a little bit chunkier. However, I can sew through them more than I can sew through my 15/0s and make it much stronger. So everybody's going to have a different size bead. I cannot tell you exactly how many 11/0s to pick up. I'm just going to pick up several, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to test and make sure that you have enough for the size of your button. Okay, so I have picked up 24 little 11 seed beads. And like I said, the number is really not important because everybody's going to have a different kind of bead and size of bead, or excuse me, button on this end. So what we've done is we've picked up the amount that we think may go around our button. I actually think I'm going to pick up one more. 25, make it odd. And then I'm going to go back through this 4mm round bead. Then I'm going to wrap this around my finger and get it as tight as I can so that I don't get any slack when I try to tie it on to the button. So I'm going to hold this tight, and then I'm just going to try to slide this over the button and see how well it works. And actually, it works a little too well. It goes over it really, really easily. Well, let me see. So I'm going to take like maybe 4 beads off and try it again until I get it to where it goes on here, but I don't have a ton of extra length, because this is going to make my bracelet longer. So I'm going to go ahead and try taking off 4, try it on again, and once I get the amount I want, then we'll be back. Okay, so I have adjusted my circle down until it is the size that I want for my button. So all you have to do after you put it through, if you need to adjust it, is just pull the thread back through, pull the needle back through. If you have to take the needle off, take it off, and then adjust your beads, put it back on, tighten it around your finger, and try it around the bead. Once you have done that and you've established the length you want for this loop, then you're coming out of your little 4mm round bead, and you're going to begin to sew back up through all the beads. So you're just going to go through all of the beads like this and just continue all the way around until you come back through your 4mm round. Once you've done that, sew around it one more time so that you have 3 passes of thread through this loop, because it needs to be strong for your clasping. So go ahead and sew back through a couple of times. Once you have done that and you're coming out of the 4mm round bead, we'll come back and do our embellishment down on this side. Okay, so now I have done my 3 passes of thread through, and I'm just making sure that my beads aren't pulled so tight that they're crumpled up or doing anything weird. I want them to lay nice and neat like this. And then I am going to go into the crystal here and the 8mm round bead, and I'm going to begin my embellishment down this side again. So I'll pick up an 11/0 and then a crystal, the 3x2, and an 11/0, and I will slide from 8mm bead to 8mm bead. Pop these down into place, make sure that you don't pull it so tight you mess up your clasping, and then continue all the way down this side with this embellishment. Once we get down to here, we will be back and we will start our next embellishment pass. Okay, so now I have placed my entire embellishment all the way on this side, and I'm coming out of the 8mm bead here, right underneath where my clasping is. So let's get close here, and we're going to do an embellishment down the center between the 4mm round beads. But we need to sew down to this bead to start the embellishment, because whichever bead we start the embellishment in is the bead we will end up in, and we will be ready to do the next bead. So we want to be down here so that when we finish our embellishment, we can go here. So this is what we're going to do. We're coming out of this 8mm round here. We're going to go into the 3x2. We're going to go into the 4mm round here, like this, and then we're going to sew all the way down to this 4mm round and start our embellishments. So let's just sew through this 3x2, and then when you come out of the 8mm round, ignore the 11/0 on the other side. Just come through the 8mm round. I'm sorry, I was out of frame. So sew around, come out of the 8mm round, ignore this 11/0 here, and then we're going to go into the 3x2 in the middle here, and then we're going to go into this 4mm round right here. And we're going to begin our embellishments. So we're going to use 15/0 seed beads and our 3x2 crystals. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick up 4 15/0 seed beads. And I'm designing this, so I may decide I need more than 4 15/0s, but I'm going to start with 4 15/0s, and then a 3x2 crystal, and then 4 more 15/0s. Let's see how we do here. So I'm coming out of this side of the little 4mm round crystal. I'm going to go ahead, you can go straight across or you can go diagonal. So I'm coming out of this side, I'm going to go into this side here. Just do a little diagonal stitch. It doesn't matter, the stitch will turn out the same regardless, but this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to pull this across, and the 4 15/0s worked fine. So now I am going to, if you're using something smaller than toe hose, you may need 5 15/0s. You'll just have to adjust it and see how it works. So I'm coming out of this 4mm round now. I'm going to pick up 4 15/0s, and I'm just going to go back through this crystal right here at a diagonal and pull these down. And then I'm going to pick up 4 more 15/0 seed beads, and I am going to sew into this 4mm round right here. Now, we could go ahead and just do our next embellishment exactly the same way, but either way, when we end up here, we're going to end up back up here. So you can sew down and then make your embellishment, or you can just continue your embellishment. Regardless, we're going to have to sew around. I thought I could change that by sewing down the first one, but regardless, you're going to end up sewing around some of the units to do this. So let's do a couple units together so you can see what I'm talking about. I am in the area and I am prepared to do my next one through this bead. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up my 4 15/0 seed beads, my crystal, and then my 4 15/0s. That's only 3. We need 4. And I'm just going to come straight across down into this opposite 4mm round. I'm actually going to go into the opposite side. I just think it turns out nicer if you do a diagonal stitch here. So I'm coming out that side, I'm going into this side, and like I said, doesn't truly matter. If you don't want to do it that way, just go straight across. That's fine. I've pulled this down, and now I am going to, I'll get you just a little bit closer, and then I am going to pick up 4 15/0 seed beads. And then I am going to go through the crystal in the middle here. Just like that. I'm going to put my thumb over it just to hold everything in place. And pull those up nice and neat. And then pick up 4 more 15/0 seed beads. And then I'm going to go into this side of my 4mm round. Now, as you can see, I have to sew down to this one now. So regardless if you sew down to it first or second, you're still going to have to sew through these beads to get to the next middle bead, 4mm round, to do your next embellishment. So what I'm going to do now is I have to sew through this 3x2, this 8mm round, this 3x2, and then into the 4mm round. So let me show you. I'm going to go through the 3x2, coming out of the 4mm round. I'm going to go into the 8mm round. Ignore this 11/0, don't go through it. And then I'm going to go into this 3x2 and then into the 4mm round in the middle. Now, if you have to do it in 2 strokes, then do it in 2, but it would probably be easier to just grab them both, because it may be difficult to get through once you pull out of this bead to get into this bead. So just take your time and manipulate your needle through. And once you've done that, then you begin your next embellishment exactly the same way. And you are ready to go here, then you'll be ready to do this one, then you'll have to sew around, so on and so forth. So just sew through your beads, come back until you can get into your 4mm round, continue your embellishment through the top. Okay, so I'm working through mine. I also wanted to show you another way to travel through, just in case you're having difficulty getting through the little crystal, the 8mm round, and the crystal. Some of us sew tighter than others, and some of us are using bigger needles and thread and so on and so forth. So let me show you another way. I've just made my last embellishment. I'm coming out of the 4mm round. I can go into my original side of my embellishment here. I can go through these 4 15-0s and then through the crystal. Then I can go through these 4 15-0s, and then I can go through the 4mm round. Tighten up my embellishment. Make sure you tighten your embellishment between each one. You don't want any slack or any thread showing. So tighten it up, and then you're ready to do the next one. So whether you travel through the beadwork out here or you travel through your embellishment, you will need to work your way down to the next bead. This could be a simpler way going through the embellishment. It's up to you how you want to do it. Either way will work. I'm going to continue working the top embellishment, and I will be back and show you how it looks and how to tie off. Okay, so as you can see, I have finished my entire embellishment. I want to get in close so you can see the detail of these units. This is a very basic stitch and a very basic embellishment. But because of the way we put the crystals in between the beads and such, it brings it up a little bit from just very, very basic, very, very average looking beadwork to something that's quite a bit more special. So it looks really nice. Now, I just put on my last embellishment. So because I worked from here to here, I'm coming out of this 4mm round bead here. So I have to work my way back up into this bead, or as I'm tying off, since I'm going to tie off, I don't have to go back up through my embellishment or through the beads if I don't want to. I can now just go into this little crystal here, this 8mm seed bead, or 8mm round, and work my way up so that I can tie this off. So I'm just coming through. However, it is easiest for you to work your way. If you need to come up through your embellishment, that's fine too. You just need to find a place, and I'm going to go between this 8/0 and this little crystal here to tie a knot. So I'm going underneath that little thread bridge that's between these two beads, and I'm going to pull my thread into a loop, go through it, and pull a knot. And then I'm going to go into this crystal here. Let me back up just a little. I can go up into this crystal, and then I'll exit and go into the 4mm round, because this has all your thread through for your clasping, for your loop here. So it might be a little tight to try to get through all at once. And of course I have a knot in my thread. Hang on 1 second here. There we go, little slip knot. And then I'm going to go through this one here. And like I said, it's tight. So if you need to, you can work back through the embellishment and come down here and tie again. You just have to kind of figure out where your thread is going to flow nicely for you. So I'm coming out here. I'm going to go through this crystal here, here, and this 8mm round, and then I can tie another knot here. So I'm just going to go underneath. I'm going between this seed bead and this 8mm round. try to guide my thread so that it goes underneath that 8mm round, above the seed bead, and then I can just travel down into the seed bead if I can get into it. If I cannot, I can go into this crystal here, and I think I'll do that. Go into this little crystal here. Just stay in your thread path and excuse me, find a little way through. Okay, so I'm coming out of this 4mm round. I'm going to go into this crystal here, and up through this 8mm round one more time. And then I'm just going to cut my thread off and burn it down. Now you can sew through it as much as you want to make it as secure as you would like, but I think I have that wrapped through pretty good, so I'm just going to cut this down, and then I'm going to move this little tag away from my work a little bit and burn it down, which will also give a little knot to hold it to, just like that. Now I have my finished bracelet, and I'm going to see how long it ended up, see how it fits, all that good stuff. So this is what it looks like. It's really very pretty, just a different look with these beads. And like I said, you can use any beads you want. You don't have to use these, but I think it turned out really pretty that way. Now, I did lose a little bit of length, so this will work really well with my last embellishment. And I'll still have movement, and I'll still be able to wear my bracelet just fine. So let me put this on, and I'll be right back. On my wrist, so you can see I have some movement. This is my clasping. It's quite pretty. This is what this looks like. Now, I made my circle, and once it's on there, it works really well, but I made it just a little too tight. It's difficult to push over the bead. Once I get it over, it's fabulous. It fits just right. But I should have probably left one more, maybe two more beads in. But it looks really good, and let's get you in close so you can see the detail. It turns out really pretty. So anyway, that's how you make this bracelet. Use any beads you have in your stash. Like I said, you could use a 6mm round. You're just going to have to do more units. But it all works. It works fabulous. It's a real basic stitch, so you should be able to swap out some beads and be just fine with it. Anyway, that's what that looks like. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. See you in the next one. Bye-bye.